Welcome to our viewers in the African continent. My name is Madla Dlamini. We are going to be continuously giving you the latest, what is happening in the pandemic that is happening around the globe. We call it the pandemic, but some of us, they just call it madness that has been going on around the world. But I'm not going to waste too much of your time. As our viewers, I have an amazing panel with me, and I have a usual suspect as well. You will know who she is. I don't want to say Advocate Pearl. I don't want to say Pastor Pearl. Sis, welcome.
Thank you, Ndate Mandla. It's always a pleasure to be here.
It's always in the African culture, Babu Mashred, to say ladies first, Abu Me first. But we have to introduce a man that does not need no introduction in the African continent, not only in South Africa, but in the African continent and the globe. Ndate Reverend Meshoe, the only man that stood in front of the president of South Africa and said, Mr. President. I don't want to repeat your speech. Welcome, Ndate Meshoe.
Thank you very much for having me on this show. It is an honor to share ideas and solutions.
And solutions.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I don't want to go too far on what you've done, but your journey, for me, it's been inspirational. And it's been, incredible for South Africans, not only for children of this country, but, for the rest of the citizens of this country. Okay, without wasting further time, we have to, before I'm sent summons, because I'm misbehaving, leaving the attorney out of this introduction, I have to introduce Jaro from JD.
Vogel.
JD Vogel.
From Vogel Incorporated. How are you doing?
Vogel Incorporated. I beg your pardon. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
To this discussion that we are going to be having this afternoon.
Thanks so much for having us. We're humbled to be here. Thank you.
Let me start with you, because we've been experiencing a little bit of legal waves happening in the past, I would say 10 months or so in South Africa. How has COVID and the legal fraternity, treated you?
Well, it's been a very tough time for all of us, the legal fraternity included. It's been tough on the whole country. We are in uncharted territories now. There's no legislation really in place that could properly prepare us for what we have to deal with today. And so we are in a situation where there's a little bit of legal uncertainty, where we have to look at the courts for direction at this stage.
Yes. Yes. Okay, great. Coming through to you, Pearl, you've made some incredible calls, whether it's from the corporate sector, or whether it's from the unions, whether it's from the parents, or whether it's from the courts. How has been the journey with you, Pearl?
I think the journey has been difficult because of the information that's being released. And like my colleague as well is talking about the legislation and uncharted territories. And when you have institutions that, first of all, don't have the capacity to set legal precedents. And I'm talking about the CCMA right now. I mean, they can set a pattern, but it's the courts that actually set precedent. So we really are hoping that we have judicial officers out there who really understand the legislative issues that are involved, so that we will not have flawed rulings. And I want to suggest also that we look at some of the international decisions that have already been made out there, such as the U.S. Supreme Court decision, which clearly said that mandatory vaccinations, on imposing them on employees is not the way to go. It is encroaching on their lives, their safety, and the health. And the Senate has agreed with that, and so has the Canadian Superior Court. So there's international court cases out there that is giving some great guidance, I think, and we need to look at those decisions.
Very good. Let me get to you, Ndate Meshoe. I know you wear many hats, but I'm interested in two. I'm interested in your political hat, and I'm interested in the Christian, aspect of that. If you may assist us and assist our viewers, how has the church been affected by this madness, chaos that have gone around the globe?
Unfortunately, the church has been affected negatively. There are many people who used to be in church who are no more in church today
Wow.
because of the lockdown.
Yeah.
You know that Christians are not meant to be on their own. When this whole lockdowns and madness started, our church, like all other churches, met virtually only for 1 month.
Wow.
And the Lord spoke to me. The Lord said, you are not allowed by government to meet under the roof of your church, but you are allowed to meet under the roof of my heavens. So we went out. Just after a month, we went out and we met in the open. May, June, July, it was cold.
Yeah.
And many old ladies over 60, they would come to meetings with blankets because it was cold. We were meeting outside.
Yeah.
Because we realized that what they were trying to do was also aimed at the church. Because this is not about health at all. All viewers must know that these lockdowns and this so-called pandemic and this control over the people and tyranny is not about concern for anybody's health. It's about control. That is why Christians in particular, who claim that greater is he that is in them than he that is in the world, must rise up and say, we will not be fooled. I mean, we have heard people make contradictory statements, including our president. You know, the president of South Africa once said, nobody will be forced to take the vaccine. I repeat, nobody. And then he's somersaulted. So this time, definitely, we are going to be on his case because he again said, and I'm going to quote him and tell him where he said those words, on what date, when he said, well, he was thanking the South Africans, thanking the millions of South Africans who volunteered to participate in a trial. How do you force people to participate in an experiment? Because these are experimental vaccines. So what we are seeing in the world is tyranny and nothing else. And we are not going to allow them to get away with it. We are speaking out and we are standing up and we are declaring that because I'm talking now as a Christian leader, in the name of Jesus, they will not succeed.
Amen. In the name of Jesus, greater is in me than the one that is wandering around there like a vaccine or like a virus. But let's bring the legal aspect into this. Reverend Meshoe has just mentioned something very important and critical, I think, for our viewers and South Africans at large, that the president has made statements and is somersaulted on his statements. Legally, what can South Africans do in terms of looking to the president right in the eyes and say, Mr. President, we don't think that you are still representing us if you are continuing this way?
Well, the issue that we're sitting with is a trias politica principle, where there's a clear differentiation between politics and the bench, the legal system. And we are looking at the implementation of certain policies by individuals and corporates that could infringe on human rights. So these actions of these individuals and groups will have to be tested in court, because at this stage there are not any legislation specifically enacted to deal with COVID. And the existing legislation that we have is by far not sufficient to deal with the intricacies and the complexities that we are faced with. So the arena would be the courts. And then from there, it will have to be ventilated. But it's very important that people should stand up for their rights, like the Reverend said, and like my colleague also alluded to. It's very important people should stand up, and that if they believe they have a case where their legal rights are being infringed, seek the legal avenues, do it legally, get legal advice from competent people. South Africa is a country of awesome depth and resources. There are a lot of talented people out there that can assist people with needs. Let the matters come to court, let it be ventilated. And I believe in our democracy, and I believe at the end of the day, justice will prevail and our democracy will be upheld.
Taking the very same question to you, Pearl. I mean, what I'm interested so that our viewers can hear, when they face the president today, in terms of the somersaults that he's been doing, what can they say? do
Yeah,
here?
I think my colleague put it very succinctly when he talked about demarcation between politics. You know, we have the three arms of government. So there's the judiciary, there's the legislature, and there's the executive. So we do have to distinguish between the judiciary. And I think one of the things that we really have to get clear going forward is the law and the legislation, developing the law concerning this. One of my great concerns was the aspect of how easily we wanted to override our constitutional rights. Constitutional rights, the Constitution is our most supreme, highest law of the land. Every other piece of legislation takes its strength from the Constitution. And we cannot easily override hard-won and hard-entrenched constitutional rights. Section 12 has been referred to, that we have a right to bodily and psychological, physiological integrity.
Yes.
Section 10, which people don't refer to, is the right to dignity. But the courts have interpreted the right to dignity to include freedom of choice, that they go together.
Yeah.
So we have a freedom of choice. Where does that come in when that is actually ignored by employers and others? So we have to go back to the constitutional courts rights. It's like the Reverend said, it's not just about mandatory vaccination. It's about your freedoms going from here. And we have to look at that. The Employment Equity Act, it prohibits unfair discrimination. So now, if you are going to fire unvaccinated employees because they can contract and transmit COVID, you have to fire vaccinated employees too, because they can also, scientifically, they can also contract COVID. In fact, our president did contract COVID whilst vaccinated. So you must fire them. If you don't fire them, it's what? It's discrimination. And it must go to the South Africa Human Rights Council, and you lodge a case for discrimination against them, and lodge a case also to the constitutional courts, because you can't fire one and not fire the other when we both contract and can transmit COVID.
I like the way you put it, Pearl, that, it just does not make sense. I've been struggling. I've conducted many interviews trying to make sense out of it all, with the doctors, with the scientists, with the lawyers, with the church. Nothing makes sense. We keep continuously getting messages from our viewers to say, please, can you ask them to come back again, because what they are saying, it's not happening in my workplace. But coming back to you, Reverend, I think they've given you a challenge in terms of what their response, will be in my question, to say what South Africans can do with the flip-flopping that the current president of the Republic is doing. Can you do what you did for us in the beginning of this lockdown, standing up in that house, there is no more, there is no more, and face the man in the eye and say, Mr. President, it is time now. We take off masks, we take out everything, we leave our people so that our economy goes back to normal.
Well, one of the things I'm going to say is the public must not trust their president.
Wow. That's big.
I'm going to tell him, you will not be trusted. And I tell the public not to trust you. You are not a man of your word. And South Africa needs a leader. South Africa needs a president whose words can be taken seriously. But not the one we have right now. President Ramaphosa, and some people disagree with me when I say, President Ramaphosa, to me, is the worst president of all the presidents we have had. Not JZ, but Ramaphosa. And the reason is because he's taking the lives of the people cheaply. He is not serious about our personal lives. He's not serious about the very constitution that he was the leader in putting together. He was the key man. He was the leader. All right? The very constitution that the whole world is respecting South Africa for producing, they say it's the most liberal constitution. And yet that constitution that he helped to put together, the rights that he promised South Africans, particularly those of our color, who came from a background where they didn't have choices. He undermines those choices today. So for him, if we talk about people having sins, he's worse than them all, because he knows the pain of being denied the right to access to education. Now he's encouraging universities to deny students access to universities, which is immoral as far as I'm concerned. Okay, it's wrong and it's immoral. Now again, they blame the unvaccinated for transmitting COVID. What about the president who was vaccinated? And after his vaccination, what happened? Was he protected by that vaccination he got? No. He got COVID after vaccination. So to give the impression that it's only people who are not vaccinated who would transmit the disease, it's wrong. Who transmit the virus, it's wrong. Because there are hospitals in the world. We are told Israel, the place that I like, okay? Israel, the majority of people who are in hospitals are not people who are unvaccinated. But there are people who are vaccinated. So the argument in South Africa definitely shows that the people who are pushing it are not interested in truth. Because truth is, there are other countries, not only Israel, Gibraltar is one of them. They say it's 100% vaccinated, and yet they are suffering, they are in pain because they are getting COVID. Their infections are increasing all the time. So South African leaders, South African scientists, if they want to be respected, they must become people of truth. They must come out and engage scientists who put the lives of people more than their own image. They are messing up their images because they're not telling the truth.
You hear it, scientists in South Africa. You hear it, doctors in South Africa. It is time for you to stand up and stand up for the medical science that you studied at the university for donkeys of years, not 3 years, 4 years, 7 years, but the experience and the exposure that you got as well after that. But I want to now bring it closer to home, to all of us here. We've had an observation since January 2020, there is no COVID matter that is set in court in the judge in front of a judge and the judge rule. There's one which was appealed and overturned. What is happening with all these matters that are on the roll in the courts of the Republic of South Africa? Let me start there.
Can I say something about that? Because there's a pain in our hearts. Okay. And when I say a pain, it's because end October, we applied, actually we placed on the roll an urgent application. End of October, until today, that urgent application has not come before the court. You tell me, what's happening? October, you say, Lord, to our legal heads, this is to our justice. This matter is urgent. Please, children should not be vaccinated. Until today, that's not been heard. What's the problem?
And even, Dr. Reynold Rasson is the one who has lodged also a case in the Constitutional Court on mandatory vaccination. Same thing, which is why we did the video on justice delayed is justice denied. But he lodged an urgent application also on the mandatory vaccination issue. And the court came back to say that no urgency was put. So that's another appeal we want to make to the judiciary, is to say that justice delayed. We were taught that in first-year law, that one of the first things, one of the first tenets of justice is that cases must be heard expeditiously and speedily. So when you can't even get a date for a matter, that is very concerning. And in fact, I was reading the Judicial Services Conduct Book the other day, and as I was reading it, I discovered that one of the reasons that a judge can be taken up for disciplinary issues is if he doesn't actually listen to cases and expedite them in time. Maybe we need to get involved in that and take some judges up on that.
And ask a question, who's captured now?
That's the other reason why I'm asking this question, because for us it's not about naming and shaming judges who are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But it has come to our attention. We had guys in Pretoria last Wednesday pleading with the judge president of Gauteng to say, can you provide us with your case, with the date for a sit down regarding your matter. What is it? Because one of the viewers just sent us a note and said they must go open a case at the police station for the judge president. Maybe it should be arrested. Then I asked from the legal minds, I said, can that be done before we respond? I said, no, because if that happens, then you will find a way. Because now we will then say, no, the matter is being investigated now. then he washes under. So what is it that South Africans can do? Because your case, it's a very important case because it speaks to the children of this country.
Yeah. We want to respect our justice system. We want to. They have a role to play.
Yeah.
Their actions must show us that they take our concerns and our cases seriously. But there's definitely no excuse to lodge an urgent application in October. Now we are in February. It's still not heard.
Wow.
That definitely does not inspire the reasons to respect the judiciary. So my appeal is that the judges that will hear this, that we want to respect you.
Yeah.
But please do the right thing. When people are crying, people are dying, people are dealing with the injured, people who are injured because of these vaccines. Okay? We were on the media about a person, Zakele, from Newcastle, who has been injured, terribly injured. We met with the family. The family is messed up, you know. It's just confusion, it's pain, it's crying all the time. It moves your heart. If you still have a conscience, if you still have a heart to feel or compassion, it breaks one's heart. But they're not doing anything about it. So what should we think about them?
Raising that, Reverend Meshoe, something happened after your interview with Zakele and the lady on television. We inquired from the Ministry of Health to say, can this be justice in terms of what is happening? Can the Ministry of Health, alert us as the media to say this is what is happening? That gentleman is not sick. And we saw that the Minister of Health wrote a statement disputing what the gentleman has gone through, saying, no, he's suffering from cancer. It's got nothing to do with vaccination. It's got nothing to do with anything else. How did you guys receive that?
Okay, well, I will not hesitate to say he's lying.
Wow.
Okay? Scientific facts
Wow.
are proving that people who receive the vaccine, the cases of cancer have increased by 300%.
Wow.
300%. All over the world. So South Africa, we have leaders who are hiding information. But they should know that even though the media obviously is not informing us, we know what's happening all over the world. We have relatives and we have friends. We know what's happening. So for them to act like nobody who gets this vaccine is going to have effects, adverse effects, is not going to be sick, that's not the truth. They're running from the truth. There are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of cases that are being fought overseas. Obviously, these are lawyers. They will make sure that the whatever case outcomes of those cases that they're brought to South Africa. We want some of these guys to be punished, and they will be punished.
Can I add to what that Meshoe has said? When the minister, actually Joe Pahla, was rolling out this issue to children, and we know why children were selected, because in his speech, I'm quoting his speech, he said that the target was 70% of people to be targeted. They only had a roughly 30%. And he said, I'm quoting his speech, that through targeting the children at school, they would add 6 million to their numbers. So we know that this is a numbers game. And of course, we understand that unfortunately the children's bill, which I'm hoping ACDP will get amended, the children's bill allows for medical intervention on children between the ages of 12 and above without their parents' consent. So it was deliberate, and they understood that they didn't need the parents' consent, which is why we did training on what parents should tell their children. Now, in the same speech, I'm getting to his point now, the minister said that we are going to inject the children with only 1 jab of Pfizer, not 2. And the reasons he articulated, because I put this to the deputy minister on a Zoom meeting, Deputy Minister Ndadedlomo. He said the reason why we are only injecting them with 1, quote unquote, is because he says it has been shown that children can get transient myocarditis if they get 2 jabs of the Pfizer. So now my question to the Deputy Minister of Health was to say, if I understand you correctly, the minister was saying, if we give them 100% of the vaccination, they can get transient myocarditis, which is, although I'm a lawyer, is a form of heart disease. So the minister's saying, we will not give them 100% of a jab that can give them potential heart disease. Instead, we'll give them 50%.
Wow. Wow.
So there's only a 50% chance of them getting. That
Sorry,
doesn't make common sense to
No.
me. Why give them at all for children who, it is said scientifically, have only a 0.34% chance of contracting COVID anyway? Why endanger them with that? And that's the importance of the case that ACDP and others are taking. Protect our children. Don't put them at risk when they are at very little risk. When it's shown, for instance, that our natural immunity is much better than any vaccine you can get. I mean, the government announced last night around alert level 1 regulations, they've reduced them. They've reduced the regulations. And what they've said, I love what they've said, because what they said is they reduced them because they've discovered that South African immunity is between 60 to 80%, which means we have herd immunity, and we've always said that. That Omicron it has helped us. We all have herd immunity. Now, here's the interesting thing, which I have to drop. We have between 60 to 80% immunity with 30% vaccination. So what does that mean? It means we didn't get our immunity from vaccination.
Correct.
Wow.
It means that most of our immunity is from natural immunity.
Correct.
So,
here in South Africa, I have to pause you there, Pearl. Here in South Africa, you have had immunity. Whatever that means, click on the buttons below so that Advocate Pearl will explain to you what that means. And all our medical aspects will be able to explain to you what it means. But very important that we've been highlighting on the shows, Pearl. The Deputy Minister, is he a medical doctor?
Yes, he is.
He is a medical
He's
doctor.
Dr. Dlomo. Yes.
So it's not a PhD, it's not an honorary doctorate that is got.
It's a medical. In fact, we had a conversation around it because he was asking me if I may not be aware that SAFRA, because I said these trials have not been, they're trials and they've not been approved.
Yes.
And he asked me, are you aware, because you're not a doctor, are you aware of SAFRA? And then I responded to the Deputy Minister, the same SAFRA that was taken to court.
Yes.
The one that you're saying is approved was taken to court twice, once by AfriForum, second time by ACDP, because they refused to allow South Africans access to ivermectin, which has been proven to drastically reduce a Nobel Peace Prize winning drug that has been on the market for 30 years, but you want to expose people to an untested clinical trial experimental drug and force them to take it when we have a cheap, affordable, well-proven ivermectin in the form of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. So I asked him that, and he said I was simplifying.
I'm asking that in the background because we've been getting viewers complaining about the truth and what the so-called scientists and doctors are telling, which is the untruth. So what you've just said, you've just confirmed what our viewers are concerned about in terms of the truth and untruth. Now, Jaro, what I want to ask from you as an attorney, what can citizens of this country, I'll come back to you, Natomesh, as well, from the political aspect. What can citizens of this country do for the leaders that have misled them so much throughout these 2 years, making not only contradictory statements, but misleading and suicidal statements to citizens?
Well, it's a matter of fact that has to be proven and tested in court. And once the facts become transparent and tried, after rulings of court being made, only then we know what the facts are, and only then people can be put to task for whatever reason, should the reasons exist. So it amounts to justice delayed being justice denied. This is the situation we're sitting with. There's a current matter in the High Court in Bloemfontein of the University of Free State that's being challenged by members of community, by the Free State for Choice Association. That's a broad-based association. So members of the public are starting to cry out. They're starting to ask questions. Why are our fundamental human rights being infringed? Why should we adhere to certain policies? Why are certain legislation like papaya being totally ignored? Why do I have to disclose my medical status to people?
Wow.
I mean, when has these tried principles been overturned in court?
Yes.
Why are these things being allowed? We raised a question regarding the science. Is the science really tested? What scientific tests were specifically conducted in South Africa? What about certain tests that could possibly show harm to people?
Yes.
Because it's become known to attorneys now that people are being hurt because they're being approached by people, members of public, to instigate legal claims.
Wow.
We've seen it in practice.
Wow.
So these are all matters that will have to be tested. So the medical evidence will be placed before court, and it will be adjudicated, and people will know the truth. It's coming out. It's coming out now.
The truth is coming out, South Africans, very soon, but there is hope out there. We asked from the citizens' point of view. Now, let's come back to you, Dr. Meshoe, from the political point of view. How can South African citizens look up to you as political parties and say, you know what, please assist us here and there?
I think voters out there have to test all political parties in South Africa about how much they care about their livelihoods and about their lives and health. Because political parties that do not speak on behalf of members of the public to protect their dignity, to protect their health, cannot be trusted as far as I'm concerned. All right? Because this matter of vaccines, particularly mandatory vaccines, is a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
It's a matter of life and death. It's not about where you want to stay, what you're going to eat. It's a matter of life and death. Because there are too many people who have suffered serious effects after this vaccination. So they need to speak out in defense of their people. Now, what disappoints me is unions who always say we stand for the workers. Now, workers are being discriminated against, and these unions are quiet. Now, if you remember correctly, when the issue of mandatory vaccines first came up, COSATU stood up and said they will not allow their workers to be vaccinated. They've changed their tune.
Wow.
Were they taken to a restaurant or to a hotel or what's happening?
Or to the bank.
Let the people know that the time will come when people will ask the question, let's see your bank account from the time we had COVID. You need to tell us where you got that money, how you got that money. They must know it's going to happen. These are not empty threats or just dreams. It is going to happen. All the people who sold to the public for the sake of their own personal gain have to be charged. And the Senates that have decided that they are going to keep some students away from campus, those Senates will have to be sued on their personal capacities. I personally think, if I was a lawyer, I would say we need to get the names of all these senators. All these senates. Okay. Now, if a person is a member of the Senate, I know they speak on behalf of the universities, but SRCs have said we don't agree. Now, they are also undermining SRCs, those individuals who are part of the Senate. So when the time comes, and the time will come, you look at what's happening internationally. Look at what's happening in Canada right now. Okay, the Ontario is coming to a standstill because of the trucks that have surrounded the place. People are saying enough is enough. Now these guys are not going to run away. I saw a police, somebody speak on behalf of the police from Bolivia, saying we are organizing ourselves, we are going to stand with the people. Because we realize that what is being done to our people is unfair and is wrong. So they are talking and mobilizing other police people in other countries. And I'm hoping that even South African police will wake up. South African soldiers will wake up and say we will not do to the citizens of South Africa what the Australian police are doing to their citizens. It is atrocious, and these things must be stopped. So politically, we are saying all political parties who are quiet on this matter cannot be trusted.
Police and military, you can hear it from the Reverend himself. But I just wanted to bring something slightly different, because that will assist our viewers in terms of understanding what they can do in terms of taking people, personally liable for that. What does the Nuremberg Code say, to us as, citizens of the world?
Yeah. Well, Article 1 of the Nuremberg Code, I've been seeing messages going out quoting Article 6. It's actually Article 1.
Yeah.
So Article 1 of the Nuremberg Code is the one that is actually in alignment with Section 12 of our Constitution,
Wow.
which speaks
Okay.
to the right to bodily integrity and physiological integrity, which speaks to the aspect that people, before getting medical intervention, must be informed consent. In other words, you must be told what's in the vaccine and any potentials for negative adverse effects. And it also speaks to the right to not have your body being used as medical experimentation. Now, what's very interesting about these big farmers, and yes, we're naming you big farmers, is that they actually anticipated that they would be sued. They knew. And why I'm saying that is because they released, when they released the vaccines, they released it with agreements and contracts with the governments to say no liability.
Wow.
So who does that? Any lawyer who knows. When you have enough assurance and confidence in your product,
Yeah.
you are not going to say no liability because you know that the thing works. So the fact that these vaccines were released to governments on the basis of no liability is telling you that they didn't have confidence themselves, and they knew the potential. They knew the blood clot story. They knew the myocarditis story. They knew all of that. And so they exempted themselves from being sued. And then our own government, through our lovely Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, set up a compensation fund called the No Fault. It's not just a compensation fault. You don't set up a compensation fund if you don't know that there are adverse effects. So the compensation fund is to compensate people who've suffered for adverse effects. Why will you set that up if there are no adverse effects? Number one. Number two, why will you call it no fault compensation? So you're actually trying to exonerate yourself. And I say trying because there's a level that you can, taking it to court, there's a level. If you know, and it can be proven that you know that this drug, this vaccine was dangerous, there's no exoneration, no matter how many no liability clauses you've written. But this is definitely what I call, I'm beginning to term it vaccine apartheid. Apartheid. And we as people who've come out of apartheid, who understand the ramifications of apartheid, should be the ones to stand up against apartheid. You cannot discriminate against me on the basis of my non-vaccination when both of us can transmit. So get vaccine apartheid. And we're saying to you, South Africa, as people who conquered and defeated apartheid before, apartheid, stand up against this vaccination. Apartheid is trying to divide South Africans on no scientific basis. Stand up against it and say, Haibo, Simunye, we are one. Kenako. Genoeg is genoeg, and Kwanele. All of the above.
I was going to give each and everyone a departing shot. I'll be spoiling everything for you, Pearl, if I give you another one. But Jaro, what will be the plea and the departing shot out of this discussion to say?
I cannot agree more with what my colleague has stated. This segregation that they're trying to do for whatever reason is totally unacceptable in our democracy. And people should stand up legally for their rights. They should question people. They should take people to court where there are merits for it. They should consult proper legal practitioners for the necessary legal advice. They should not allow people to bully them into signing documents they don't want to sign, doing things they don't want to do, participating in things they don't want to participate in, to be victimized. They should stand up, especially people in the medical fraternity. You have the right to stand up.
Just before we close on this one, I'm still going to come to you in terms of your departure point and the plea out there to our viewers. Obviously, there is a case that is supposed to be, there are two cases that are supposed to be sitting out soon. I think there is one on the 4th.
It's on the 11th.
7th.
It's on the 11th?
Yes.
Okay, if that's the case, what's that case all
It's
about?
basically a matter against the University of the Free State, against
Okay.
their COVID-19 policy.
Okay,
It will be adjudicated in Bloemfontein High Court.
yeah.
And basically what the stakeholders are asking for is basically on two legs. On the first leg, they're asking for an interdict against the university for implementing basically the apartheid regime via medical means. So that is the first leg of it.
Okay.
They are asking that the policy should not be implemented,
Yeah.
an interdict. Then second to that, that the interdict then be totally, after that has been adjudicated, that the aspect of the policy itself
Yeah.
be adjudicated and then hopefully set aside.
Okay.
So it's based on two legs, because the University of the Free State is aiming at implementing its policy on the 14th of February.
Okay.
And there's no love in that for unvaccinated people, unfortunately.
Okay. So we hear it, South Africans, on the 11th of February in the Bloemfontein High Court. That's where the matter is going to be sitting for the university students of the Free State. We plead with all of you to go and support these initiatives, because as South Africans, we know now that the only thing that our judges know is when we make a big noise outside the courts.
Sure.
If we are not outside the courts, then they will not take us serious. They will not take the matter that is before them as serious as well. Departing short, two things that I would like to get from you. A plea from your colleagues in Parliament. We know that now you're not sitting in that beautiful house at the moment. Any other way that you are meeting, what will be your plea to them in terms of support, of ending this anarchy that is happening in South Africa, that has obviously been happening globally? That's the first one. The second one, Judge President of Gauteng, if you could direct a message to him to say, please, Ndate, can you hear this for our children's sake?
Well, to the MPs, I would say to them, believe science. It might be a shock to them to say to them, please believe science, because science has proved that you will be infected even if you are vaccinated. Okay? Because vaccination do not protect you from being infected. And I would say, here is your president, a good example. There is another example, Data Mantashe. Vaccinated, he also got COVID. So why should people be forced to vaccinate when vaccination does not protect them? So science is saying that, believe science. Those who said to you, only those who are unvaccinated will be infected, that has been crushed. None of the groups would be spared from infections, whether vaccinated or not. That is science, okay? And then to the judge, president. We honor him.
Yes.
We respect him.
Yes.
But we are saying, let him be just. He's Mr. Justice.
Yes.
He's a justice.
Yes.
Some justices are not just. So we want to ask this judge president to be just and to know that people are hurting.
Yeah.
Families are breaking down. People are crying. They are asking for justice. Please give us justice. Please urgently hear or give us a date as the ACDP.
Yes.
Because we have been waiting since October for the sake of the children. It's an urgent matter. For the sake of the children, please, please, please. Those that are already hurt, they are enough.
Yeah.
We don't want more. Let's stop this thing. Please give us a date.
Thank you very
May
much.
I say the last thing?
Yes, yes.
Now,
yes.
the last thing I would want to say, to endorse what she also said. During apartheid, if we only went to court, the courts were against us. Okay? What was done by the apartheid government was legal. The courts could not reverse that. One of the things that reversed that was getting into the streets. That is the language that government understand.
Yes.
Well, we have 11 official language. When they will not hear you speaking Zulu, Sesotho, and all these languages, go to the streets, then they open their ears. Okay? So we need to support that case, the 11th.
Yes.
I'm going to be in Bloemfontein, and ACDP in Bloemfontein is going to be rallied to go to the courts.
Yes.
We'll be there to support that case because it is unfair for apartheid that you spoke about.
Yes.
We cannot just sit back and allow apartheid being perpetuated by the same people who fought for apartheid. I heard somebody say maybe it's because the president was never in exile. That's why he's doing this. People who were in exile, that's why Zuma did not agree with something like this because he knows the pains. Okay, but this one was not in exile. Could be one of the reasons. But the president needs to stop what he's doing because he's destroying the livelihoods of individuals in South Africa.
No, thank you very much for being a great guest. I mean, we've been saying enough is enough, and we know that there's court cases that are out there. There's a university student court case, there's a children's court case out in Pretoria, but the urgent one, it is the one that is on the 11th of February in Bloemfontein, where students are fighting for their dear careers to be not forced into getting vaccinated in order for them to access education. We are saying to Africa, Kinako, I've learned it from you. Kinako. Enough is enough. Genoeg is genoeg. Gwanele. It is enough. Thank you very much for being great guests, for sharing such important information for our viewers. I hope next time they will learn something, they will be able to. But next time we'll see them, we will see them in Free State.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Until next time, Africa, adios.